In this closing presentation in AFES, I want to share with you, initially I was thinking I was going to share with you how Mindvalley built a 2 million person email list. But then I thought, look, you guys will figure that out. There are tons of other people who talk about that sort of thing. Instead, I want to share with you something a little bit more personal. I want to share with you how there was a particular period recently where it felt like the entire universe was caving in on me. And almost 3 times in a row, over 3 years, I almost lost the entire business. I've never shared this story publicly, but it was a period of incredible pain for me between 2013 and 2016. I think there's a value in sharing it here because it makes you understand that all of us are going to go through a lot of shit as we try to build our influence. But secondly, there were some interesting lessons I learned from this period. And I think there's a value in these lessons as well to help you overcome the hurdles. So I'd like to share this story instead. Are you guys cool with that? So we all know what Mindvalley does. We bring together the world's best minds. I'm really proud of the fact that we employ people from 54 different countries right now, that we put on these incredible festivals, that we work from one of the most beautiful office spaces in the world. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the breakdown. And the interesting thing is, this breakdown didn't happen in the early years of Mindvalley. It happened 10 years into running the company. And that is what I find most interesting about it. 10 years into being a CEO, I was fucking failing miserably. And I want to share what happened because it was so dramatic how disaster after disaster after disaster struck. I thought the universe was literally against me. So the story is, I started Mindvalley in 2003 in that little apartment in New York City. So back then, I was teaching meditation in New York. And funny story about that little apartment is, this is Times Square 2003, before Disney moved into Times Square and created all of the Disney Broadway shows. So this wasn't Disney Times Square, this was like crack and hookers Times Square. Literally, you would get propositioned walking home almost every single night by a lady on the streets. Before I moved into that apartment, I found out from the landlord that it was a Thai massage parlor, which had been refurbished. And if you lived in Times Square, New York, you know what Thai massage parlor is code word for. So yes, Mindvalley did start in a whorehouse, former whorehouse. Now, that is me in 2003 in that apartment. I like this photo because the table and the chair I'm in, I actually salvaged from the streets. My neighbors discarded it. Beautiful thing about New York, it's a very friendly society. Every year when the new IKEA catalog comes out, the wealthier citizens go and buy the latest IKEA furniture. The older IKEA furniture gets left out on the street for people like me to pick up and use. Both of those were furniture I literally found on the street. In fact, that table, I loved that table. I used to work on that table. You could see I barely could afford pants back then. But on that table in the IKEA catalog is actually called the lack table. It's funny. The Swedes at IKEA actually named a table for the mental state of lack you need to work on that 1495 desk. So that was 2003. Now flash forward, 2013, 10 years ahead. You would think that after a decade, I would have everything figured out, right? Now Mindvalley was doing decent back then in 2013. AFES was running. We had just done our first AFES in Thailand. But this is when I'd say the most difficult years of my life suddenly started popping into existence. So the first thing that happened is that just before Thanksgiving 2013, I found out that my accountant, who had been working with me for 4.5 years, had been stealing from me for 4 years. And she was someone that I completely trusted. She had stolen about $250,000, and all of a sudden I found that my right-hand person had been cheating on me for 4 years to the tune of $250,000. That was devastating. It violated my trust in so many things. But that wasn't the end of it. Just 6 months after that incident, that completely shattered my illusion of how awesome I was as a CEO and I had everything under control. Mindvalley was working with several different authors, and our biggest client was, I won't state the name, but it was responsible for about 20% of our business. It was a meditation company, and we were in partnership with them, and we were the official promoters, and they brought in a CEO. And that CEO knew that our partnership, which had lasted 7 years, was done in a handshake agreement. And he saw the amount of revenue and sales we were bringing into them, and he thought, I want the entire thing. So I got sued by this CEO. And it was a completely frivolous lawsuit, but what had happened was, because I didn't have my shit in order, I hadn't actually signed a contract. So the CEO knew that I didn't have a contract. She knew it was a handshake agreement, and she decided to sue me in the court of Laredo, Texas. Now, Laredo, Texas is a Mexican border town between Texas and Mexico. It has the most corrupt court district in the world. And I knew that she had bribed the judges. I knew because her own family members had leaked that to me. I did not want to get into a frivolous lawsuit and have to travel to Laredo and, face these judges whom I knew were dishonest. And so I gave up a $5 million business. I literally signed it off. We had to lay off 12 employees in Argentina who ran that business. That was devastating. These employees had kids, and our entire Mindvalley Spanish operations, which relied on that business, disappeared. Lost everything. Our Argentinian office had to be shut down. That was incident number 2. Now, to get myself out of that shit, I decided to go to Burning Man with the guy who at that point was my best friend. Went to Burning Man, had a lot of incredible experiences together, really bonded as men, and he then convinced me that he could help me with my web operations. And the way to do that was he was going to take over my merchant account. And to do this, I made another stupid mistake. Because I trusted him so much, because we had done so much drugs together at Burning Man, I gave him access to my bank account. 6 months later, he fled with $150,000.